Now this fight has definitely taken a new turn. I will say that I am really invested into Zoro versus King now. Now this fight was already interesting to me because King was involved, and when it comes to King, he is the only individual in the Beast Pirates that we know the least of, and so that sparked a bit of mystery within his character. And of course, as time goes on, we're learning more and more about this guy. But with Zoro versus King, there's a lot of mysteries on both sides, in which on King's side there's a whole mystery about him, his race that has seemingly gone extinct, the Lunarians, and with Zoro we're getting deeper and deeper into the mysteries of the blade, and in particular Enma. Again, Enma has been a very huge topic in the community. There's been a lot of talk about it being the only sword in the series to have an ability like this, which is very weird, and we still don't have answers to that yet. But this chapter could give us more clarity as to why that is. So overall, the mystery aspect of this fight is really getting me invested in this, because damn, this fight just took a whole new turn in this chapter. Now, first things first, let's talk about Zoro. But before we keep going, guys, I would appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Let's go for 500 likes, and hit the bell if you want to get notified for future content. Now, Zoro's development in this chapter was amazing. He came to realize a lot of things that he knew, granted information that he only knew in pieces. But here we come to see that he's finally able to put 2 and 2 together to actually get some sort of answer, right? In regards to not only Enma, but blades in general, particularly cursed blades. And here we got a flashback to Zoro having a moment with Shimotsuki Kozaburo, in which he states that his sword is a blade of a murderer, and that every sword has a will of their own, and it is the swordsman's duty to take control and master the blade. And obviously that's what we're seeing here with Enma. Zoro for the most part hasn't been using Enma the way Enma wants it to be used, if that makes any sense, right? As we see it right now, Enma is actually testing Zoro if he's able to actually become its master, which makes a lot of sense going off of the previous chapter in which Enma started to take a lot of Zoro's Ryo, right? And this is something that's been reiterated time and time again in the series, in which a sword for the most part chooses its owner. And Enma is currently in the process of testing Zoro to see whether he is capable enough. I do also want to add on that Enma is almost the perfect blade for Zoro, and I say this because the whole thing with Zoro is that he excels in these types of situations where he is pushed to the extreme limits, right? A lot of his fights require him having to go above and beyond. We're seeing it here again with Enma, in which Enma is taking too much Haki and is pushing Zoro to his limits. The reason Enma is acting up is because Zoro is not supposed to hold back when he's using this blade. The sword was meant to be used in a way in which it takes a toll on your Haki, right? And thus, if not used in that way, the sword rejects the user. Zoro for the most part has been controlling his use of Ryo, which is not the whole point of Enma. Apparently Enma is supposed to be used in a way where you're supposed to allow it take what it wants, and that's apparently how Odin was using it, meaning that he just let Enma take as much Ryo as it wanted, and Zoro has seemingly come to that realization. And again, these situations are where Zoro excels at the most. Pushing Zoro to the brink of his limits always brings out a new power within. I do also want to point out something interesting that happened in this chapter as well, and that is that Enma appears to be black without Zoro actually using it or touching it, right? And this is very interesting because I think this is hinting at the idea of Zoro turning Enma into a black blade, or how black blades form in general. And this is something that we might actually get to see in this arc. Now, I don't think Enma is going to be the one that's going to turn into a black blade in this arc. I think that's going to be Wado Ichimonji, because that's been a sword that he's had for a long period of time, more so than the other ones, right? And thus the connection to Wado Ichimonji is the greatest since he's had it for a long period of time. Therefore, I would see Wado Ichimonji turning into a black blade before the others. Now, it is still possible that all three could turn into black blades at the same time, depending on how this turning a blade into a black blade works, but I think it's fair to make the assumption that Wado Ichimonji should be the first blade that turns black. And obviously this is not an easy feat, because if it was, we would see a lot of top tiers with black blades, but as of right now there's only 2 characters that have black blades, and that is Mihawk and Ryuma. So having a connection with your sword definitely plays a role here. I do also want to point out that Conqueror's Haki will most likely play a role into turning blades black. Having the will of a king and inserting your will into an object in a sense makes that object an extension of your body. So black blades are blades that are literally a part of a swordsman's body, to the point that even without the user holding it, his will is still retained in the sword. I do want to say that I really like the self-realization that Zoro had in this chapter. It's something that we honestly don't see that often with Zoro, and I also said this in my previous chapter in which I really like Zoro's analysis of King's ability. And here we come to see in this chapter that he's obviously obtained some level of clarity as to why some things are the way that they are, specifically in the case of Enma and cursed blades in general. So I will say that I am really looking forward to this fight, and to me it seems like the battle hasn't even started yet. It feels like this is the beginning of a crazy showdown of a true fight, and when I say that I mean a back and forth between Zoro and King, and not Zoro getting beat in a sort of one-sided showdown, which it has been for the majority of this fight. Zoro was on the defensive the whole time, and I think after this point moving forward, it is going to be a true fight with each side exchanging death blows. Now I also like that we get to see Zoro use base conquerors in this chapter. Towards the end, we had some fodder that were running towards him, and then they all seem to have collapsed from something, in which King states that, "So you also have King's Haki?" And Zoro replies by saying, "That is the promise that I made to my captain and my oldest friend." Dope moment from Zoro, honestly, though I do find it funny that the anime actually exposed this scene a lot earlier than they should, but that's usually what the anime does. So Zoro using Conqueror's was cool here, and it would seem that he's also using Conqueror's coding, and this is made very apparent by Oda because we do see the black streak of lightning on his blades, and that is usually a telltale sign that someone is using advanced Conqueror's or Conqueror's coding, as some people would say, as it would seem that the Haki is leaking out of the blades, right? I think this is where I think King might want to evade Zoro's attacks, because those attacks are definitely going to penetrate his hides or whatever he has going on, because Zoro's attack potential has just gone up a new level. Once he starts incorporating Conqueror's Haki to his attacks now, you might want to avoid that. I can only imagine how powerful Ashura is. We do also have to take into account a new power that Zoro might obtain in this fight, because now he has more control of Conqueror's Haki, so we might see something better than Ashura here, or at least an enhanced version of Ashura. So really looking forward to that. Now there's also the internal destruction Haki, but I don't think Zoro has that ability as of right now. However, I could see him unlocking this Haki in this fight. Zoro was already well versed in Ryo, so maybe he just needs a little bit of blooming before he can attain that level that Luffy's on right now. So overall, I will say that I am extremely hyped to see the progress Zoro makes in this fight. Obviously we know that Zoro is going to win, but I think it's more exciting to see how he gets there, right? I'd also want to point out that Zoro is going to be out after this battle, because I feel like he's endured so much during this whole raid, and we know that the medicine that he took, we're going to see the after effects once everything is done and over, right? And that would definitely take its toll on his body. I'm not even sure how Zoro is standing up right now, right? Especially considering the amount of damage he's taken so far. Now let's also talk about King here as well. So far King has been very impressive, which is the norm for first commanders, as they are separated from any other member in a Yonko's crew other than the captain themselves. King is no exception here. And with King, there still seems to be a lot of mystery behind the Lunarians, because in this chapter there's a few more interesting things that happened. Now in the beginning, we deviate from Zoro to Sanji, and here Queen mentions that King is a part of the Lunarian tribe, which we already knew, and apparently these guys were monsters that were able to survive in any environment or condition, right? And this is interesting because it adds on another layer, because the first thing that they mentioned about these guys is that they were able to control fire, right? And now it would seem that they can also survive in any environment, and Queen mentions for this exact reason is why they were considered gods in ancient times. And this could sort of explain the things that we've seen so far with King, where he's able to take on attacks but recover extremely quickly, and it's to the point that he doesn't even take damage, right? Or the damage isn't sustained, and that is exactly what we've seen so far, because Zoro has done countless attacks but so far 0 damage. But in the previous chapter we do get some hints as to why that is, because when Zoro was talking about King having, reptiles having tough hides, King mentions that he is on another level compared to that, right? Or above that. Initially I thought that was him confirming that he was an awakened ancient Zoan and had like a greater durability, but this chapter seems to hint more towards the idea of that being a part of his race. a quality that his race has, which could tie into them having the ability to survive in any environment. So it could be a thing where when something happens to him, his body sort of adapts to counteract the effects. So the more Zoro cuts him, the more durable his body becomes, or something of that sort. In the previous chapters, we saw that Zoro was able to draw blood from King, but now none of his attacks actually even pierce King. So maybe King's ability might be something along the lines of him adapting to whatever is thrown at him, which would make sense as to the explanation that we got that these guys can survive in any conditions. Their bodies adapt in order for them to sustain. I do want to say that this is hands down the strongest race in the entirety of One Piece, because this guy is just stacked up with all sorts of different abilities, and it does make you question how these guys were eradicated given that they had such powerful trait of their bodies, right? Things are definitely hinting towards the world government playing a role in their extinction, given that they were on the red line and the red line is currently occupied by these celestial dragons. They do also share some similarities to the Skypians as well, with the black wing. So there is a lot of lore value when it comes to King. This isn't only inserted because this is a cool race, but obviously there's more ties it has to history itself, and that is also building up King's character. But hopefully we get more information moving forward, because there seems to be a lot going on with the Lunarian race. We've seen that he has the ability to morph his body, though that might be a trait of his devil fruit. We're not completely sure. We know that he's able to create fire, and now we know that he's also able to survive in any environment, or at least his people had that ability to do so. So it is very interesting. So again, King is definitely packed with a lot that he has to offer. I will also say that we haven't seen this guy use Haki at all. Now he's wearing all black, but we can't really tell, but we haven't really seen anything that indicates that he's used Haki at all. It would seem that everything he's done so far has been based on his natural abilities. And I do also want to point out that he wasn't really shook when Zoro used Conqueror's Haki, or even the Conqueror's coding, because I'm sure he's probably aware of this. And given that King has a name like that, like King, I wouldn't be surprised if he has Conqueror's Haki as well. That seems to be a thing or a theme with first mates, in which they seem to have Conqueror's Haki as well. Katakuri had it, and it would seem that King most likely has it too, based on his title. And who knows, he might be able to use Conqueror's coding as well. I wouldn't be surprised. But all in all, King has proven himself to be an incredible fighter, and probably Zoro's first real challenge in the new world. So King versus Zoro is looking really fire right now. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Comment down below what you guys think. Hit the bell if you want to get notified for future content. Subscribe for more One Piece content on this channel, and you can follow me on Twitter at PharaohSpace. But it is Pharaoh, guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.